So, well read, what are we talking about today?
Today, Matsy, we're talking about Penguin Episode 5, Homecoming. In this episode, Penguin tries to reestablish his business after losing all of his supply of shrooms and working to get back everything that the Maronis had taken from him after their betrayal in the last episode by kidnapping their son and executing members of the family. And of course, Sophia, not to be underestimated, survives the encounter from the previous episode, comes back for revenge, and takes her rightful place as head of the Falcone family as their new iteration, the Gigantes.
That's fascinating. In Twitless, what are we reading today?
We're also talking about issue 3, uh, Penguin, Pain, and Prejudice. This is where Penguin advances some schemes. He's still stealing jewelry in some very violent ways. He's also recoiling from the death of his mother from the previous issue and starting replacing that old lost love with a new one, a young lady named Cassandra who is blind. And so we get a little bit of some interesting romance for the Penguin, which is not something we it's an interesting angle to explore for that character.
So, I'm going to jump in with a hot take. I think the Penguin Pain and Prejudice is doing something interesting where it starts off with, even though we're getting an origin story, I mean, he's pretty bad from the start. Like his initial responses to trauma are to perpetuate trauma on people. So he learns that from his youth, and as an adult, he's about as bad as he can be. And we're starting to see him soften, or maybe uh, I suppose he's being humanized to a certain extent with this new relationship with the blind Cassandra, and we're getting something different with the TV show that we've actually kind of brought up several times, where he's actually so multidimensional and easy to empathize with that it's hard to see how you're going to turn him into a sort of villain that needs a Batman to correct him. And it could have there's something that's kind of interesting that's happening between both this comic and the TV show, where a woman might be that linchpin kind of figure, particularly with the TV show. Like maybe he's gonna have to lose his mom? Question mark. I think he's mentioned something like that, so I'm interested in what you guys think. I think there was something in episode 5 where he mentions that his mom is the one thing that keeps him good, I think was the term that he used, which is a big, I mean, that's ringing the bell. That's, maybe that's the direction we're gonna have to take in order to see him become a villain. But are we gonna be happy with that? Would we rather see something like we get in the comic, where we just have a villain in spades who gets some extra dimensionality kind of fleshed out beyond that? What do you guys think?
I think that in the comic, you definitely get a much more sadistic um, vision of who the Penguin is. And this is a character that's very selfish and driven only by things that immediately satisfy his own ends. You're right, Matt, that in the show, it is a multidimensional character and much easier to empathize with. The way I would frame the character in the show is someone who's willing to do whatever it takes to survive. And he will stab anyone in the back, steal candy from any baby if he needed to. But he always does it for what seems to be justified in his own mind and his own world reasons. He's taking care of his family, he's protecting his own, he's caring for his mother, and he's trying to live up to her expectations of how uh, he should be in terms of his status and his accomplishments, and his reflection upon her as his caretaker.
I'm not entirely sold. I'm not sure that I'm
Mm.
sold on the multidimensionality aspect yet. And I'm wondering if it's because of how Colin Farrell is playing this character, and the character appears to be definitely, I completely concede. He appears to be multidimensional, but the more we get to know about him, the more we see him backstab other people and destroy lives. The more it almost
You think
reduces
he
that multidimensionality to be almost a facade, where it's like he almost is like pretending to be more multidimensional than he really is. I'm actually just a
you
cruel, heartless monster,
you think
and
he takes pleasure in it, basically?
I'm not even sure if he
He's
might just
betraying us, the viewer, maybe?
yeah, and I
Hmm,
think that might be, and I'm trying not to. I'm not, like I said, I'm not entirely sold on that, and that does bring a little dimensionality to the show, if not the character himself, if that's in fact happening, and and it was something I kind of wanted to explore in regards to the comic. And I'd love to hear your opinions on this as to which character, whether the comic version or the show version, which one's more evil? Because the comic version started out strong with beheading an old lady to take a necklace, and like you just doing body mutilation, and but after episode 5, when he immolates a mother and son while they embrace, I
Mhm.
the show version's starting to catch up, and at the same time, the comic version in Pain and Prejudice is starting to soften because he
yeah.
meets this lover character who he can warm up to, and he's afraid. He has something to lose now because he doesn't. She's blind. She wants to touch his face. She wants to experience, like, see how beautiful and handsome he is because he's very kind to her. And so they have this kind of Grecian tragedy kind of setup almost, which I think is intentional because her name's Cassandra. But right around the point where I didn't think that the comic version could be redeemed at all, it started to, like I said, they're almost neck and neck as to which one is more redeemable, irredeemable. And I've heard there are rumors about where this show is going to go, and so I'm curious as to how this will actually play out in the end. But it's a fascinating thing to track. So it's very interesting to read this series and watch the series in tandem. So
Let's take a brief pause to hear from the awesome creators joining us today and find out what cool projects they're currently working on.
Hey guys, if you love sword and sandal historical fiction with a healthy dose of ancient Roman and Egyptian fantasy mixed in, then check out Kyrie. We've got 450 pages printed so far, a fourth book on the way. Order your books today at curiecomic.com.
modern day classic superhero storytelling. Get The Adventures of Omega Girl issues 1 through 5 now on Indie Planet.
Thank you to our awesome creators, and now back to the video.
It's funny that the comic has such dark lows that, but it also knows how to handle these cute, these innocent little high notes, which is surprising. I thought it would fumble those, like there was only one registered that this team could tackle, but there doesn't, other than lying to her about his handsomeness, it doesn't seem like he's doing anything at all that makes the relationship uh, appear faded for he doesn't have mixed motivations. He's doing nothing that seems abusive or betrays his this other side of him that we see.
Well,
So it's kind of interesting, that duality.
I think this character, Cassandra, is introduced at an opportune moment, right when he loses his mother, and
Mm,
it's because of that that I think that he's toying with the notion of having another woman in his life. I don't
yeah.
think that the love is sincere there. I think this is just another bauble for him,
Oh,
trying to
good
fill a
point.
void.
Another
And
snow globe. Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like the evil and maliciousness is much deeper in the comic, making it more comical. So they again replay the scene where he picks on a victim to torment, and
Yep.
somebody who disrespected him in some way, basically somebody who was taking care of his mother's body, made an offhand comment, and he would capture this person, and he would restrain them, and then retell all of these tortures that he's committing actively towards their family members, just to see their wretched response to all of this horror that he's subjecting them to, psychological horror.
That is,
And
however, juxtaposed right next to him doing if that aspect is more malicious, it's also juxtaposed with him being more generous than he is in the show, because the woman who's weeping at his mother's demise, he goes and he buys the building and signs it over to her name, and he assigns a chauffeur that will ferry her until the day she dies. Like, the level of wealth that he
Yeah,
just
private
dropped.
jet at her disposal.
Right.
Yeah.
The level of wealth he dropped on a woman who was just a caretaker and shed a tear. And so it's if he is more comically evil in that moment, he's also more comically generous. So it's a weird almost
It's funny.
attempt. And those scenes are
Yeah.
juxtaposed on the page right next to each other. While he's torturing one man, he's also they put the other moment where he is saying, and here is how you're completely taken care of forever. So he's also comically generous and to a hyperbolic degree, which I think brings an interesting counterbalance to it.
but I think in the show you don't see that extreme. Like when he burns the son and the mother, the key thing to keep in mind during that moment is that that family betrayed them, and they were competitors. They were other predatory elements in this environment of survival of the fittest that he resides in. He's just following the laws of the jungle when he does a malicious act like that. And there isn't necessarily malice in his heart. There is simply a willingness to go to any length and any extreme to meet his end. He's still the vulnerable young boy who lies down next to his mother in this episode and says, "Are you happy here? Are you okay?" And
Mm,
she lashes out at him. So there
yeah.
is still a very strong humanized component in him, and anything that is shown counter to that is always justified in his intent to try to protect what he considers to be sacred in his life.
He's also a drug dealer in the show, pushing a highly
I was
addictive
ignoring that.
substance to the and the that's what I'm saying. That's
Mhm.
what makes it interesting, because there's actually like initially I thought the comic and the show were just completely like, it was just, oh, the comic's just going overboard. But as this continues, it's almost neck and neck as to, and it becomes more complicated. Which version is more detestable? Which one I'm recoiling from more? I will say one thing that I am recoiling from for the past two issues, which hasn't been brought up yet. And I just need eye bleach for this. But every time Penguin passes by his kind of underground club scene, and what I'm
Mhm.
talking about, and he
Yeah.
always passes by the little room the Joker's doing something heinous in.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, what do you think
eh,
about that?
yeah, I feel like we have to bring that up. That we get to see.
Yeah,
Uh,
wrong room.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the wrong room. It's happened, I think, twice, and just Joker doing something just nutty and degenerate.
The
He has somebody like tied to a wheel, and he's like throwing daggers at them while there's bikinied women, standing behind him.
Yeah,
That scene.
yeah,
the
that one.
the awkward pose, like, everything about this is so strange. I mean, we kinda mentioned this before in this run, but when you rely this much on photo reference, you end up drawing things, not as they are, but as they looked in the photo. So you're like, you give like the left arm, as you guys can see, with the it just looks so flimsy because of foreshortening. If you were using your imagination, you draw an arm as it is, so you'd make it clear, and it would look compelling, and you'd see some action, and it would be aesthetic. You wouldn't just draw it as it appeared in the picture. So it's just like so many weird things. Maybe this would have been a moment of levity in the comic if it just wasn't, it didn't feel so staged. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it plays awkward. I agree. Kind of ham-fisted in there. It doesn't feel natural or organic to the story. Why would the Joker be tucked away in a convenient little room, for a little sight gag, to be introduced somewhere in the book? So I did want to go back quickly though to that theme of, which character is actually more genuinely sadistic, because I think the one that we haven't mentioned yet that does personify that cartoonish level of sadism is actually Sophia Falcone, who is completely detached from the reality of murdering her entire family, whether or not they were guilty of.
Yeah, I was hoping we were gonna talk about that. Yes. What do you think
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that?
whether or not they were guilty of, condemning her life and killing her mother, she just
Killing her
blanketly.
cousin just because she
They're all
slighted
guilty.
her
They're all
after
guilty.
years. Mhm.
Yeah, and then she uses the one last made man who is left living,
Johnny Viti, yeah.
Johnny Viti, to establish her reputation and gain respect as the new head of the family, and then executes him in the same manner of cold blood
Yeah.
as she did her entire family, just to assert that she is now in control firmly of this crime family. And there doesn't seem to be any redeeming quality in her that I can glean whatsoever. So,
But they're doing the feminine thing. Twitless and we've talked about this before, but it's interesting that even though she's kind of modeled in an intelligent, sophisticated way, they've kind of modeled the feminist ideal of a woman kind of triumphing, reacting to a patriarchal system and enacting like a triumphal revenge spree on that injustice that she's been born into. But the interesting thing is that even that image, that model of the feminist triumph has to bend the knee to the feminine archetype of a woman reacting, it being thrust upon with circumstances and then reacting to that and to overcome. Whereas the male archetype, who is the pigwood, just has a goal. He sees a star fixed in the heavens, and he will do anything to get it. And that is perfectly natural. That's the primordial masculine image. So it's still plagued with these archetypes. There's nothing modern about these archetypes. You wouldn't switch the Pigwood and Sophia and have their circumstances play out and have them feel as natural. We still have to play into the same archetypes, but somehow Sophia is like there's some kind of revolutionary thing where you're supposed to feel that she's justified, even
Yeah,
if
no,
she's
I
killing
agree with
more
that.
people than Penguin. What do you think about that? That's my other hot take.
No, I think that tracks
You know?
because, Penguin, first off, kinda seems to have first off, he takes pleasure in what he's doing. The more
Mm,
he gets involved in criminal activity, the more alive he becomes at the, when they were almost executed and Vic saves them and they jump in the car and he's like, "We're in it now, Vic." Like, he is genuinely, even though things have even taken a turn sideways, he is genuinely excited about the roller coaster ride that they're on. And Sophia is not. I don't think at any point in this series has she been genuinely excited and happy. She smiles, but Miliotti's performance with her eyes, the eyes are often telling a different kind of a story. That there's these layers to her that you're supposed to be kind of reading. That there's like a depth to what she's doing, conflict or just a uh, a very wounded spirit that may be lashing out way more out of proportion than maybe the audience is comfortable with. But the audience is comfortable with her lashing out, I think, or at least the intention for the audience is that you're supposed to be comfortable with her lashing out to some extent. Her family's betrayed her. Her family locked her up. Her family put her through the Arkham episode, which our faces were shoved into that to see how much she has suffered, so that when she comes and she has this revenge moment, I think the intention is to feel some level of that it's justified, and the actions she continually takes seem to be an answer to that. When she, obviously, which is all full of spoilers, but at the near the I guess climax of this episode, when she kind of announces herself as Gigante, she casts aside the final Falcone, murders Viti on a pile of literal blood money. Um, that's meant it's right as Viti was basically trying to rein her in again, to try and
yep.
reimpose the old family control over her. And you can kind of, whether or not we again like what she does, the story very clearly wants us to empathize with those moves. Whereas with Penguin, it's just like him just kind of enjoying being bad. I'm a drug dealer. This is great. It's fun. I'm
Well,
gonna be kingpin. It's
I
gonna be
think
great.
I think the key thing that's common between both of them, her villainy to me feels more pronounced, but I think they're both products of their environment. Where Penguin came from the neighborhood, this is his natural setting, but all of it is done with home and heart in mind. He's there caring for his mother. He's giving a young kid, Vic, another chance. He still believes in love and some kind of future and salvation with this woman, the prostitute that he hopes to also bring to his hiding spot. Whereas her, the machinations that she had to live in under the Falcone family empire and the betrayals that would happen there, it seems like she's also been very much groomed by this environment and setting, and is just a manifestation of all of the things that they were subjected to in their coming to this final culmination of ultimate evil acts that they're committing in this show. So if they are immersed in it and reveling in it, it's because for them the clothing feels very natural.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating ride to go through both this comic and the TV show because it's been pretty brutal in both instances, and the complexity. Fortunately, there's complexity and layers now that are apparent in both the comic and the TV show. It's going to be interesting to see how this particular run wraps up, which I hope we see to the end of for Penguin Pain and Prejudice, and also in particular, obviously, how the HBO series is going to wrap up because we've got so many things built in, particularly to this HBO show, where uh, we're almost kind of rooting for characters at certain points that, like we've been saying, we're not quite sure if this is a world that needs a Batman. Maybe this is just another Sopranos with funny prosthetics. So we'll see where this goes. Thanks, guys, for hanging out and discussing this.
Thank you very much for checking out the video. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more.